Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sports Section, a podcast brought to you by the Rider News. My name is Carolo Pascale, alongside with Shaun Chornobroff and Dylan Manfre. We have some pretty big topics to talk about today, one of them being the state of the MAAC right now. And Dylan, you brought this topic to us, so why don't you start it off?
All right, well, let's get something very, very clear. And Shaun, I think you might agree with this you might agree with me on this one. Non-conference basketball should not be played this season.
No.
I'm just going to put it at that.
I'm just going
to put it at that. The teams are not ready. There are currently 6 out of the 11 Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference teams. Can't believe I just riddled that one off seamlessly. Wow, good job. There are currently 6 of the 11 MAAC teams being affected by COVID right now, Rider Bronx being one of them. And the season's going to start November 25th? No way. No way. Kevin Baggett told John Rothstein the other day that they're just not ready. And they're not. Like, I don't care where you were before. Like, the Rider recorded its positive test. Like, that's all wiped away. Almost. I don't know what they've been doing like during their lockdown, like what they've been able to do while they were quarantining in their dorm or in the quarantine housing on campus, but you're not getting any basketball accomplished. Like you're just not ready. You can't do it safely. And it leads us to believe, the MAAC has that blackout week built into the second to last week of February, or the last week in February, I believe. We're getting the precursor to that now. It's going to be a mess. That week is going to get filled up fast if things are happening the way they are right now.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think it will get filled up. I said it actually, I think, a couple episodes ago. I don't think that 1 or 2 weeks is going to be enough. Or I actually told you to ask, or I believe we had talked about, I'm not sure we did it live, but 1 to 2 weeks might not be enough. I mean, let's look at Canisius already. Reggie Witherspoon recorded a positive test late October. They're on pause again. That happens during the season. That's 4 weeks out. 14-day mandatory quarantine. I'm sorry, but it's just not a possibility. And then even on our last episode, I said save non-conference basketball because it's going to affect the conference standings. And while I still believe that's true, non-conference basketball with the state the MAAC is in now puts conference basketball at risk. And no matter what, conference basketball comes first along with player safety. Non-MAAC teams can't control, or MAAC teams can't control what non-MAAC teams do. MAAC teams can kind of keep an eye on each other a little bit better. Athletic directors talk, personnel talk. Commissioner Enzer can keep an eye. He's the overruling president body. They can all keep an eye to help things go smooth. Can't do that. Rider can't be telling Seton Hall what to do or whoever we're supposed to play. It just doesn't work that way. So you have to get rid of non-conference basketball, and you have to now put everything towards conference basketball and whatever mess that's going to be. And I'll be honest, it is going to be a mess. We were right. We have our preview articles coming out this week. The amount of times I think I wrote I'm worried about how COVID affects this or that team, 4 or 5 out of the 11 teams. And there's other teams it could go for because so many teams have already been affected by this. There's a lot of roster turnover in the MAAC this year. That's not just a Rider thing. That's a MAAC thing. A lot of teams either brought in new coaches like Iona or lost a couple big time players like a Quinnipiac. That it's gonna be hard for a lot of these teams in a short off season, and that's why I was like non-conference, get these people back into play. But at this point, it's not safe, and we said it before the show. I think New Jersey broke a record high for COVID cases in a day. Like we're at the point like we're having new cases like we were in March, May, April, those months. But now we're in November, and then we also have Thanksgiving coming up, and then we have Christmas coming up, and that's supposed to be in the middle of basketball season. You can't have non-conference basketball. And if I'm a basketball coach, I'm honestly questioning whether I'm letting players go home. I mean, I don't know if you can control that, but if you're somebody who's from Ohio, you're from somewhere south, or you're from wherever, because I know Rider has a player from Ohio. You have players in the MAAC coming from all over the country. You have a mandatory 14-day quarantine likely after that. And you don't even know what's going on in those situations. Hell, it's even hard. It's hard to keep situations enclosed on campus. There's a reason Rider's sending you home for Thanksgiving break, and then we're not coming back. It's to control the spread of this pandemic. because it would just bring it back onto this campus. There's a reason me and Dylan have had to report on athletes being sent home. Our athletic director having a meeting with players and captains, because we're at that age where we're impulsive. I'm not perfect. I'm not a saint in this. I'm not going to act like I am, but it's our age group, this college age group, that is putting these type of things at risk. And now you have to try to control the season, have to add non-conference play and all of that into this. It can't happen. It really can't. I would love to see it. Really, I was really looking forward to seeing Rider play Rutgers. I'm a Rutgers fan too. It would have been a nice game for me to watch. But now it's not a game. It's a game that I hope I don't have to watch from a journalistic perspective, because I'm worried that it will creep into the MAAC and like what else could happen. I mean, Rutgers already, I don't remember if there's a basketball or football team, but one of their teams already had like a super spreader party type event, and it's negatively affected the school in the beginning of the year. So I just don't see how this happens. I really don't.
Yeah.
Let's just end the episode there, Shaun. That was just perfect. You took the words right out of my mouth for everything else I had to say. I think we should just end it there.
No, we got a little bit more to talk about.
Yeah, I know we got a little bit more to talk about, but damn, that was just eloquent as hell.
That was
appreciate it.
That was all the things I was gonna say as well. But
for my man right here. I mean, one thing I do want to touch on though, which I'm surprised you didn't mention, we gotta discuss the scheduling model a little bit. The MAAC released its new scheduling model, and honestly, I like it a lot better than the first one. The first one, you just had your normal 20 games, your normal 20 game round robin, and you're going to the different states. I actually really like the home and homes, the 5 home series, 5 away series. It still gets you to that 20 games. You still have that blackout week in the last week of February, which I honestly think could be 2 weeks. If you ask me, maybe 1.5 weeks, maybe 10 days. I don't know. I think you're gonna need a little more than 7 days at the current rate we're going here. And you guys can agree or disagree with me later, but I really like the new model, honestly. And it's gonna be interesting to see how many players or how many teams players have available, or it's gonna be interesting to see how many players are actually available for every team going into these games, because the intention is still going to be to play some games here, right? And you got to have a minimum of 8 players, no matter who they are, whether they're your last player on the bench, your role players, your starters, on a mix of a few, whether your star player is out, whether they are playing. You got to have a minimum of 8. And it's going to be interesting to see what type of lineup combinations you're gonna toy with here. Are you gonna throw in someone who's more of a role player, give them some more minutes? Because in the God forbid case that one of your star players gets out, you want them to be fresh and ready to go. Last season, Sophia Tabaro was, she hurt herself later on in the season. She got some minutes early on in the season. She played a lot in the exhibition against TCNJ, played a couple minutes here and there against Princeton, that first game of the season. Are you taking players like her, Teresa Wolak on the women's side, and giving them some more minutes? Maybe Maya Hyacinth too, giving them some more minutes in an effort to make sure they're at full game shape and full game speed in a God forbid scenario where one of your starting players, probably Victoria Toomey, if God forbid she goes out, God forbid Amanda Mobley goes out, or anybody for that matter, in your starting lineup, are you doing things to get your backups ready? You know what I mean? I think it's going to be very interesting to see the different lineup combinations that teams will be using this season.
Yeah, actually, and again, that's one of the things that I find most curious about Rider, especially like staying on Rider basketball. Like, you have to have 8 players, and we saw it in the NBA. Like, muscle injuries are probably going to be more rash this year because you're going to be in a full injury. You're going to and we don't even have the medical resources NBA teams have. Like, we have a great medical staff here, but the fact is we don't have medical resources out of Kentucky. A lot of these bigger schools have. It's just the nature of the small school Rider's a part of. But now teams are going to sit out 2 weeks and go right back into playing. It's going to be hard. And that's one of the advantages I think Rider has. I counted it today. We have 16 players on our roster. 12 of them are new to the program. But I don't know if we have a couple D1 transfers. I'm not sure if all of them could play. I know Dwight Murray already got his waiver. I'm not sure about a Malachi DeSouza who played at Albany last year, or there's one more D1 transfer who I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But even if, let's just say those two don't, you still have 14. That's more than enough for you to filter through rotation. I mean, what do we see? St. Peter's come second in the MAAC going 10-11 deep last year with a fairly young squad. Like if there's a blueprint for Kevin Baggett to surprise this year, it's St. Peter's from last year. I mean, Christian Ings, I think, could take a step up. I really do. I think the kid's explosive. I really like what he could do. He could run a point. I mean, the loss of Corey McKeithen now puts you down another man, of course, and that's a guy, I've talked about him on the podcast in the past. I've seen his high school footage. I mean, I think the kid's legit. But you have a deep roster. You have a mix of experience and youth, and you have a youth like Nehemiah Benson put up 60 points in a high school senior game just because he felt like it. He said, I want to score 60 tonight. He just did it. He was like the 5th player in Ohio history to do it or something like that. Like, he just kind of did it. Like, there is legit talent on this team. And Dylan, you were on the conference call with me. Coach Baggett said, I mean, they've got us picked 11th. I mean, you really don't know how you can't really predict that based off the roster because there was so much turnover unless you look at the team inside and out. And as someone who actually has looked at this team pretty much inside and out, there's a lot of talent. But it's going to be hard to mesh that talent together in such a short span of time now with COVID. I'll just say it out here. Guys could check out the article on Wednesday. I have Rider picked 9th in the MAAC. They're 11th. They're 11th in the coach's preseason poll. I think that's flat out disrespectful. Coach Baggett has never come less than 7th in the MAAC in his 7-8 years as coach in Rider basketball. Now, 2-time coach of the year, one of its most successful coaches. Sure, there's been a lot of turnover. Might not be the most talented roster they've ever had, but put some respect on my man's name. Like, for real. Like, put some respect on his name. The guy is as successful as they come in the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. And yeah, I get it. We lost a lot of players. There's a reason we're not picked first or second. Like, I'm not gonna ignore that fact. I'm sure Baggett isn't either. But last? You think Marist is better than us? They didn't have one player score double digits last year. Their best 3-point shooter went back home to Canada. Sure, John Dunn's had some success in the past, but how's St. Peter's doing without him? That's the test. How's St. Peter's doing without him? I like John Dunn. I hear he's a very nice guy. I got friends who've covered Marist basketball. He's supposed to be a great guy. I'm just saying, I don't think he's Kevin Baggett. And I do think there's some talent. Christian Ings is going to take a step forward. And I'm telling you, Coach Baggett is a leader of men. That's something I think me and you covering him, talking to him. He really knows how to talk to young men. He knows how to build men. He really has respect out of every person who plays for him, them, their parents, their families. Now, give him the tool and give him the ability to energize a team off of being picked last in the MAAC. I'm telling you, we're going to see some upset wins from this Rider team, and they're not going to come in last. Sure, I think they're going to finish 9th, but I'm not sure it's not going to be a bad 9th. It's going to be a 9th where me and Dylan are talking about how good they're going to be the year after this.
I do think they're going to go through some growing pains this season, especially with all the time they're losing. And I almost want to say inevitable injury this season, unfortunately, because of the lack of conditioning that they're going to be in. But they're going to play with one hell of a chip on their shoulder. That's for damn sure. Kevin Baggett, John, you and I both know it. He'll make it known that they got a chip on their shoulder. For sure. I could see them coming in 9th. I would have to agree with you there too.
Yeah, it's just how I see this team. I mean, and there's a lot of high upside guys on this team. Like Ajiri Ogamuna Johnson, I think that's how you say his name. I mean, it's a mouthful. But yeah. He's look, I mean, the guy's not the most refined center, but like he could jump out of a gym. He can go up and grab boards with ease. He'll get more time this year. Hopefully there's some refinement to his game. Christian Ings can jump out of a gym. He's explosive. You have guys who could score. Malachi DeSouza is pretty good defensively. Dwight Murray could score. We bring in a couple JUCO guys that are that had some really good production there. So there's not it's not that there's a lack of talent in my opinion. It's just that coaches don't have a familiarity with this talent. This isn't an SEC or Big Ten where you're bringing in 3, 4, 5-star recruits where even the freshmen are like, oh, top 200 in the country, you know exactly who they are. These are guys who have played 2 years of JUCO ball, and I'm telling you, one of these guys is going to surprise. I'm not quite sure who it is yet. I mean, we'll see that once we get into the game, but a couple of these guys are going to surprise. I mean, a guy I mentioned him before, Namaya Benson. Wouldn't shock me. Lawrence Foreman is a guy who took a prep year, and a lot of times when you take a prep year, become a lot more refined. And I mean, he's a tall guy, good athletic build, and he's got some skill to him. And he actually played with Corey McKeithen in high school, so that's going to be a partnership I'm looking forward to in years to come. But there's athleticism on this team. There is talent on this team. And sure, this isn't a bunch of Pennsylvania guys team, but there's talent. There's guys who know how to play a role. That's what they've shown in their past, especially the D1 guys who transfer, the guys who've been at Rider in the past. They know how to play their role. They know how to they know what they're good at, and they know how to cater to their own strengths. And more importantly, the coaching staff will know how to cater to their strengths by the end of the season. Sure, might they know it week 1 and 2? Who knows? But I think when we're talking February, when we're trying to fill in those blackout dates, we're going to be talking about how Ryder has started to pick up speed.
Yeah, I really think, at least for Christian Ings, at the games where I got to take photos at last year, he is arguably, at least in my perspective, one of the most explosive players that Ryder has.
For sure.
And he's like, watching him last year, just taking photos for the team, like, he's insane. He's insane. Like you said, he can jump out of a gym, Shaun, and he's ridiculously explosive, like you said. But transferring over from the men to the women's team, how do you guys think they're going to do this year?
Honestly, I mean, the MAAC had them picked, I believe, 7th.
You're right,
7th, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lynn Milligan, the defending coach of the 2020 MAAC champion Ryder Bronx, will not accept that whatsoever. Absolutely not. I have this, and my thought process is that they picked them 7th because they graduated 6 seniors, arguably the best senior class in Ryder history, with Stella Johnson, Amari Johnson, Aubrey Johnson, Lexi Stover, Leia Favre, and Tracy Goodman. 3 of those players, well, 2, Stella and Leia, playing professionally, and Amari is taking she's pursuing her master's in business administration in Ireland and playing college ball there. And honestly, because you lost 6 players, yes, that is a ginormous shoe to fill. You don't go every day and just pick up your replacement for Stella Johnson out on the street saying, hey, go score 24.6 points per game and be like a 2,000 career point scorer. It just doesn't happen. She is a generational talent that Ryder was so blessed to have on its roster for 4 years. Now, they have some good people coming into the program. I really would like to see Michaela Fireball. I've heard she's a great shooter. She had some really good games in high school. We know Sophie Bruinchis, 6'4", tallest woman on the team, and I think her post game is great. I think she can run the floor. I think she can be a stretch four if she capitalizes on her 3-point game. Yeah, she had a little bit of an injury early on in the preseason, but I've heard she's good now too. She really just reminds me of Lovisa Henning's daughter. Who was a senior on Marist in 2018-19. She ended the season 5th in rebounds per game, and I think 4th or 6th in blocks per game, and she was 6'2". So Sophie Bruinchis has 2 inches on her. If she can mimic her game and get to that level, Ryder's going to have a real good front court in probably Victoria Toomey at the 5, maybe Sophie Bruinchis at the 4. Honestly, you can interchange the 2. Maybe throw Teresa Wolak in there. And they have a junior named Anna, who is, I think, 6 foot. I haven't really looked up her game all that much yet, but Lynn Milligan talks highly about her. You also have Amanda Mobley running the points again in an all-MAAC second-team selection. in the preseason All-MAAC poll. I think this team's going to be at least, between 5 and 7. No higher than 5, really, because I think they're going to be a middle-of-the-pack team unless they really, start clicking early on. But I think, honestly, this team has some upside to it. They have good shooters, and I think they need to just really find their scoring identity again. And someone who's going to surprise a lot of people, Maya Hyacinth this year. She's my real underdog for this season. Anytime she was in the game last season, she just entered the game, didn't even say a word, high-fived the teammates, got the ball, shot a 3, bang, done, checked out of the game, my job is done. She would go make 2 threes, and that was about it with seconds left on the clock, probably going into halftime or ending a quarter. She wasn't in there for longer than probably 5 minutes a game, with the exception of, the TCNJ exhibition. But, you put her in there, she just hit her shot, done. I would love to see Lynn Milligan utilize her skill set more this season.
No, I mean, that's exactly what we have to see. I mean, Maya is, you talked about her offensive game. I'm more impressed with her defensively. I mean, she anticipates well, knows how to get her hands in the lanes and create steals. Her steals lead to points, and that's going to be key. I think Ryder can win. Here's a blueprint, I think, for Ryder. You win with good defensive basketball, which Coach Milligan knows how to coach. I mean, if Sophie could be everything you say she is, and then you have one of the best defensive guard duos in the MAAC, there's no reason this team can't reach that 5 spot that you said. I mean, sure, you're going to have to figure out some depth stuff, but there's no reason you can't aim for that spot with Maya, who I think is good enough to be an all defensive guard. Amanda's a pretty damn good point guard herself, all MAAC second team for a reason. And both of them have this clutch knack. Both of them have this knack to come up big in big moments. So I personally agree with pretty much everything you've said. The 5 to 7 range sounds about perfect just because of the amount of turnover. And there's one big variable in this season, the coronavirus. It's going to affect every team, and how cases creep into different teams at different times is going to be a big teller. And also, you mentioned before the new scheduling format. Dylan, tell me if I'm understanding it wrong, but it's 5 series against 5 teams. So you're only playing 10 series, right? You have 10 series? Or how does it work again? You have 20 games.
So there's 20 games.
Yeah.
There's 20 games, right? 2 games against the same team, back to back, Friday, okay. Saturday. So example,
you're still playing the other 10 teams. You're still playing the other 10 teams then.
Yes, you're still playing the other 10 teams. You're still playing the other 10 teams. You're just playing your season matchup right there.
Yeah.
You're playing, Riders playing Monmouth, hypothetical example, at Alumni Gym Friday, Saturday. Then they'll play. And
then the women's team would be playing at Monmouth Friday, Saturday.
At Monmouth, that same Friday, Saturday, okay. Yes.
All right, so yeah, I was talking myself into a hole there. I confused myself, but that's going to be another one of those key variables for this season. Let's just say we're Ryder, right? I'm saying they're 9th. But if they're opening up the season with Siena and then St. Peter's, 2 of arguably the 2 top teams in this conference, or Siena and Iona, well, a team that's opening up with Canisius and Quinnipiac, 2 teams who are projected more towards the bottom, let's just say Marist or Fairfield, and they're opening up with bottom, and Ryder has this harder opening slate, they might be down 0-4 or 1-3, while this other team's up 3-1 or 2-2. And sure, Ryder might be the better team, but then you're going to start having tests coming around the holiday season when people go home to see their families, and you're going to be seeing this mess to where we don't expect teams to have all 20 games. You need minimum of 13. We'll get to 13, but some teams might be sitting at 14. Some teams might be sitting at 17. Who knows? But the scheduling that, I don't want to be a team that opens up with a hard opening conference slate. I'd rather have that more towards the back burner, towards the back end of the season, because I'd rather open up with those softball teams, especially considering that, you don't have as much of a preseason. I don't want to open up with Iona now, especially off of Patino's comments during the press conference with us, where he said players are having trouble kind of grasping his new system. Combine that with a positive test, I'm a little bit worried about them. But I don't want to open up with Siena. They're one of the few teams bringing everybody back, and plus their coach. I'd much rather open up with Marist or Fairfield or Canisius. That's the big variable for me. I'd rather have a harder end of the season and really be battle tested going into the conference playoff then really have to be battle tested early, have to be in all these dogfights and falling down to these good teams. And, and that's when you're going to have injuries ramp up to where now you're having injuries carry over to those games you should be winning that will affect your conference seeding.
Yeah, I think at least for the games themselves, like you mentioned, they're probably not going to play all 20 games, at least to me. Seems like maybe the magic number is going to be somewhere between 13 and 15. At least
you need the minimum of 13 to qualify for the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, you need the minimum of 13, and I think the magic number is going to be somewhere around 15, which sounds about right, especially with the 2-week break and all the testing coming back from after Christmas, after Thanksgiving, all that stuff. And one thing I don't know, we didn't mention it this time, but fans for later in the year, I don't know if that's still supposed to happen. Isn't that supposed to happen sometime around Christmas? Or did they nix that?
December 23rd was their date, as, they said like no fans until December 23rd. Honestly, the way the virus is transpiring in, the region, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, the 3 states that the MAAC is in, I think I just held up 4 fingers. 3, I can count. They're going to go off state and local guidelines there. So if the governors change anything, I think that would definitely have an effect on the MAAC's view of whether they want fans in or not. And honestly, it doesn't really look too good right now. We already know they're not going to be allowing cheerleaders or a band or dance team, anything like that. Well, for Rider at least. And, at least we know on Rider's end specifically, there's no fans for the semester.
Yeah, like I was just wondering on that whether the MAAC had decided on anything, because I knew their date was sometime around Christmas. I thought it was the 23rd, but I wasn't sure if they had changed it or anything like that. But they'll probably go off of state guidelines. But either way, check out the previews for Rider on the website on theridernews.com. And that's going to wrap it up for the podcast here today. You've been listening to the Sports Section A podcast brought to you by the Rider News. Have a good one, everyone.